So really excited about this topic here, and I have my esteemed colleagues here going to delve into it. Unfortunately, we had a bigger set of panelists. COVID, unpredictable. They cannot make it, so we will make it very informing and entertaining discussion. So I wanted to kick off a quick intro about me. I lead the Accenture healthcare practice. Spent a lot of time in the US, but now based in Singapore, focused on digital solutions for our clients. But enough about me. We are living in a very, very exciting time. I couldn't be. There's so many technologies, IoT, AR, VR, metaverse, AI, that are all coming together to fruition at the same time. And that is changing the way we work and live, to be honest. And the pandemic has given us a few things, right? The healthcare companies have realized digitization is the way to survive, right? And the technology is playing a big role. So technology and digitization and business strategy are really the same, one and the same, or two sides of the same coin. So just beginning, Richard, just wanted to ask you, what are some of the trends you think are going to make a big impact in the next 3 to 5 years from a healthcare perspective?
Yeah, thanks. It's a delight to be here, and good to join you both on this panel. I think as you say, there's a lot of interesting things developing in the space, and have been over the last few years. What we've seen, particularly in the last 2 years, is just a massive acceleration. People talk about 10 years of development in 10 months. For me, my background, my company is Fundamental VR. We're all about focusing on the use of immersive technology for education and training and skills assessment. And what we've seen there is the move from people thinking about this as a potential technology for use to a inevitable technology for use and implementing it at scale. So that for us is really exciting. I think alongside that you've seen transformation in areas of digitization with patients. So again, forced by factors around COVID, but now allowing people to consult through their mobile devices, through their virtual devices, accelerate the speed of interaction in a way that's not been possible before, and all of this against a backdrop of the implementation of understanding through machine learning and often overused, but AI, starting to be able to interpret the information coming in a way that means, again, from a patient perspective, from a healthcare provider perspective, the dial moves better, it's more efficient, it's more effective.
Absolutely. I think the AR, VR is going to revolutionize how we teach people, and we'll get into that a bit more, and then also talk about metaverse, that's the word, and NFTs as well. But Pranav, healthcare, the three things everybody's trying to do, right, is reduce cost, improve outcomes, and accessibility. Talk a little bit about what you're doing and how that impacts the three key factors that are driving healthcare.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. I feel so honored to be part of this panel discussion. According to a WHO report in 2018, 15% of the whole world population has some form of disability. But to put it in perspective, there should be at least about 5,000 to 7,000 people who have some sort of disability right in this conference itself.
Wow.
But you don't find that.
Right.
The major reason is this is one aspect where we are not actually, for generations there hasn't been much of intent to work in this domain. So what we are, and the problem is there are very advanced technologies working in this sector, but they are not accessible for a lot of people, primarily because they are not affordable. So what we are interested is in actually building these technologies at an affordable price so that they are accessible for majority of the population. So as a part of that, we built Kalam, which is the first bionic hand of India, which is about 10 times more affordable than any other bionic hands that are available, and yet which is one of the most advanced bionic hands in the world.
No, amazing, Pranav. I think you're doing a lot of good. Because I have a friend who had a bad cycling accident. Now he's paraplegic all the way down from the neck. So I'm sure this advances is going to help him a lot. Richard, coming back, metaverse, and do you think the advent of the AR, VR, the medical tourism will go away? And how do we train the future doctors so they're comfortable with this technology? Because a lot of the doctors, they're still learning how to type, at least the senior ones.
Yeah, I think there is a generational thing there for sure. What we see is in the kind of the sub 40, younger than me, but the sub 40 bracket, there's a lot more readiness to embrace some of this new technology than you see perhaps in some of the later stages. That's a problem that will fix itself over time, so
right.
that doesn't worry us. What we certainly see is that when you start to bring the ability to remove rehearsal and learning from a human and put it into a virtual space, you have immediate benefits. The most obvious one is we're no longer practicing medicine on people. We are refining our skills in a controlled environment and then applying those to the human environment. And I call that pre-human competence. And that's really what we're all about trying to create. So if you talk about the metaverse, and it is a highly used phrase at the moment, where does that take us? Well, I firmly believe, just as we've seen in aviation, you can't be a commercial pilot, sit at the front of a plane and take 400 lives into the air unless you can prove in a simulation that you can do it and you can deal with the adverse outcomes. And I think that's the trajectory for medicine. I think it's certainly the trajectory for surgery. And I think that's a small part of where the metaverse will start to explode. It already exists without the name, as I said, with environments such as ours, and it will just start to propagate out further and further. And then you can take that immersive capability beyond just education. You can take it into ongoing assessment. So again, if you look around the world, you look at how doctors, surgeons, practitioners are assessed on an ongoing basis, it's pretty primitive. It rarely involves skills assessment. It's normally case file assessment and looking at theory. And again, providing the opportunity to do hands-on rehearsal, refinement, assessment, and continue to do that on an ongoing basis. Not once every 10 years, but once every week.
Right.
That, I think, is the opportunity that this kind of metaverse offers for us, and this whole immersion capability can deliver.
No, that's a good point. So I was thinking, when I was talking to some of my older relatives, before they go to surgery, there's a lot of anxiety. What's going to happen? How is he going to feel? So I think AR, VR might be able to help them to say, this is exactly how you're going to feel.
Exactly that, and it's happening today. So,
right.
In neurosurgery, over in the States, there are a couple of companies that are allowing neurosurgeons to take their patients through the journey of their procedure before it ever happens.
Yeah.
So you get comfortable, because the old saying goes, in the absence of knowledge, you get negativity. If you can fill that void with actual knowledge and understanding, then the patient's happier, the surgeon will be more relaxed. Hopefully you get a better outcome.
Right. So Pranav, do you think medical tourism will go away? Because you're able to do this kind of remote surgery from wherever you're sitting.
I don't think so. I think there's still some time, because what I actually feel is all these latest technologies, most of them are actually able to penetrate the first 1 billion. But if you see, the remaining 7 billion people are still untouched. I think there's still some time for it, and it'll take almost another 25, 30 years for the rest of the world to catch up with what's happening in the developed nations.
Yeah. No, that's a good point, though. I think when we talk to a lot of our clients, one thing has become, and you referred to this earlier, is that the pace of transformation, the change over the last 2 years, would have taken normally 10 years. And thanks to COVID, the good parts in COVID as well, that we're able to see the transformation speed up quite well. Back to Rickard, your point on what are some of the challenges you face in terms of this, as you alluded, this technology being more mainstream and the advancement in the technology?
So I've worked in technology for 30 years plus, and whatever field of technology you're in, it kind of always does the same thing, which is Gartner talk about the hype cycle.
Yep.
You have that explosion of excitement. You have a lot of different ways of doing something. They all go off in their own direction, and then things start to calm, and then they start to consolidate. And whilst that's happening, and you start to get 2 or 3 kind of ways of doing it. Whilst that's going on, Moore's law continues to apply, which is that things get faster and cheaper exponentially. And so when you look at this space and you look at the challenges, I think it's exactly that place. At the moment, it's a bit like that. Soon it's going to become like that as it consolidates. And the technology, the headsets, the processing powers, NVIDIA are up just now, the GPU powers, they're moving so quickly that what we can do in terms of fidelity, in terms of realism, in terms of interaction, is massive compared to where it was even a year ago. And then when you start to bring in edge computing and 5G, that's when you start to move things into other parts of the world. Yes. And you can start to move that through. And we do it today. So we work with Orbis, an eye charity, specializes in developing nations. They send our equipment to those nations because it's cheaper than sending a doctor. The doctor remotes in, comes in virtually, and then guides them through. And I think that's the start of that democratization, which is what's got to happen, right?
Yeah. Pranav, in your area, biogenics, what do you see some of the obstacles? And because I see a lot of accidents happening and paraplegic people, that's almost giving them a new lease on life. What are some of the challenges and how do you see the future of this evolving?
Most of this medical devices sector itself, one of the major challenges that we see is actually in regulation. Because there are multiple regulations that you have. If you have to make a medical device available in most of the countries, the major difficulty is everyone have their own regulations, and it's extremely, and for startups, and you see that there's a lot of innovation happening in startups, and they really do not have the financial power to actually make sure they finish the regulation tests and compliance for almost all the countries, right? So if there is a global unified regulation that can take care of all of this, that's actually one of the biggest bottlenecks in the medical device industry. And the second thing is also in terms of tests. When for non-invasive devices, it's pretty much easier. But the kind of tests that you have to do, the user tests for almost like for all the invasive devices, medical devices, is extremely difficult. It takes almost 7 to 10 years for us to even finish all the required tests. So I think AI can play a bigger role. Simulations can play a bigger role in this particular domain.
Awesome. No, you remind me, a few years ago we were building out this electronic health record for a company, and we were this close to being classified as a medical device. And if that happens, you go through like years of FDA approval and all that stuff, so that's not fun. But let me take you out a bit into the field of genomics. I think the speakers before referred to it. It's a fascinating field, right? So I was just talking to some of my colleagues in the company. They've done some research. And though this might not be a problem here, but in a lot of parts of the world, the heavy drinking is a big problem. But apparently, there is a gene in you that makes you predisposed to be a heavy drinker. So the genomics is going to revolutionize healthcare, guys. And if you guys have heard of 23andMe, right?
Yep.
Apparently, I didn't know this, but you have signed away your data to them. They own your data. And their valuation just increased 5 times when they declared that they're going to be a pharmaceutical company going forward. And typically, a drug discovery and time to market is about 8 years. And apparently, the success rate for the pharma is about 20%. And that's why the drugs are so expensive, right? Talk about expensive drug. But with genomics, that is reduced by 50%. And the success rate has gone up by 50%. So imagine how that's going to revolutionize care, pharmaceutical company, and pretty much everything, right? Yeah. Because imagine if you can, I was talking to you earlier, if we can say, if 3 of us are predisposed to diabetes and take targeted interventions, right? To maybe not prevent, but elongate the onset of diabetes. Think about the savings, not only the improvement in life, but saving that does to the healthcare system, right? If you can reduce the onset of diabetes by 5 years or delayed by 5 years, that's just amazing. And you can do it with targeted interventions, right? And then goes back to value-based care, which we probably won't have time to talk about. But coming back on the genomics field, I want to get your opinion on what do you think about what's happening in genomics?
Yeah, I'm no expert in that space, but certainly from my perspective, it's moving so quickly, and the impact, as you say, is immense. the pathway where we intersect with it is really with some of those pharmaceutical businesses that are in the development of that. So in the diabetes field, we're working with a company there in the clinical trials part of that to simulate and accelerate that process of that drug coming through. I think it's got fantastic potential with it. I love the idea of them identifying the weak spots within me and my family and being able to target in that way. And it's okay that those are expensive. And when we support a drug in global rollout, which is almost $1 million per patient,
right?
But it cures blindness,
right?
But as you say, the cost of that over the life, and this is in a child, so the cost of that over a lifetime is many times that. So it seems a lot up front, and there's an insurance issue there for who pays for it. But actually, the human value, the lifetime value, well worth it. I'm super excited about that whole space.
Absolutely. No, you raise up a good point. I was talking to one of the people from our pharma practice, and they said that some of the drugs, right, are really, really expensive, as you said. But we don't know, depending on your genomic or gene type, whether they'll be effective for you. So imagine, he was saying there is a drug that costs about $10,000 a week for a certain condition. I forget what it was. But imagine you taking that and it's not effective on you because of your gene makeup.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine, talk about waste of money and
Totally
resources.
right,
So the personalized, the targeted medications that we will get in the future. So now, right, we were talking earlier, all of us, if we're sick, we get the same set of antibiotics. But in the future, the drug labels will say if you have gene XYZ, you need to take this medication because it's more effective than the other one. So the pharma companies are going towards, forget the blockbuster drugs, they're going towards more personalized medicine, right? And precision medicine, really. So Pranav, what do you think that impact will be? It's a fascinating field.
Yeah. I think I was just reading earlier about an article on genomics where they mentioned that even the cost of genomics is actually almost reducing at double the speed of like Moore's law, rate of Moore's law. So I think once it becomes more and more affordable and accessible, I think it's going to revolutionize the whole healthcare ecosystem.
Yep, it's amazing. So guys, in your thoughts, what are some of the technologies that you think need to still come a bit more acceptable? I mean, data is important. Cloud is obviously, you can do with it cloud, right?
Yeah.
So data, cloud, AI, I mean, what do you think there are some of the shortcomings or things that would speed up the revolution that we're going to? We're doing it at amazing speed, but wanted to get your thoughts. From your perspective, for example, AR, VR, metaverse, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the key one's interoperability.
Right.
So much data sits in small silos or large silos. It might be at a country level, but being able to get that data to move with the patient across insurance providers, across providers of healthcare. That I think is the key one there.
Pranav, your thoughts on that?
I believe it has to be in assistive technologies. Because since 1930s, there haven't been many technologies that were actually in this space. I think in the last 5 years, it's just picking up, and I think that's got to be assistive technologies. Yeah.
Awesome. So I guess I'm told to wrap up. So some final thoughts. We'll start with you, Pranav.
I believe we've seen some phenomenal startups here in the conference. I think it's extremely important for us to actually have proper policies that in every single country that can actually support the startup ecosystem in a much more better way. Because I was just listening to a talk earlier where they were talking about how startups are going to provide more jobs than conglomerates in the next decade. Right, I think so. It's most important for us to make sure that the healthcare and medical device startup ecosystem grows much stronger.
No, absolutely makes it. Richard, your thoughts?
Yeah, really briefly, I think for me it's all about non-organic growth. I think we have the opportunity to make exponential leaps, and this is the theme here, leap. I think we're doing it in the world of VR and the use of that for surgical training. I think you talked about it in genomics. I think there's so many great places where we can just step over established practice and thinking and really move the needle quickly.
Right. So no, I couldn't agree more. And as I said earlier, I'm really excited and passionate about what we can achieve with technology. I think we have to get a few things right. You guys touched about data. I think data is important, right? How do we get the data? And there's also, I think people are still interested in building data warehouses, right? And consolidation of data. That'll take forever. So how do we get into the federated learning concepts, right? Where data can stay wherever it is, you have your algorithms going and learning from the data, right? So data is important. Then cloud. I mean, we talked to the CEOs of the companies. They said in the next 2 years, 90% of them want to move to cloud. I'm talking about healthcare companies, right? I think cloud gives you the amazing flexibility to be able to innovate fast. I think speed is the key thing, right? And I think healthcare industry for the longest period of time has lagged behind because of the access to technology and speed. And technology is changing. So I think it's going to change. It's a fascinating time, guys. Thank you very much. Really appreciate you guys and your thoughts. We'll keep the discussion going. Thank you, guys.